Hello, hello, and today we're going to talk pelvic floor. So if you want to skip ahead because you feel like you know about pelvic floor stuff, go ahead and skip to the movement part. Take a ball and a blanket or a towel, some sort of head support with you. If you don't have one of these small balls, but you have a big physio ball, grab the big physio ball, have it nearby, and you can jump to the movement part. Pelvic floor is a 3-layer tissue between your pubic bone, which is 2 bones connected in the front, your coccyx in the back, which is right off your sacrum. It's the very base of your spine, fused vertebra, and your 2 sits bones or ischial tuberosity. So you've got this diamond that's underneath the base of your trunk, and you've got this hammock of 3 layers of muscle tissue. Mostly it works with the autonomic nervous system, meaning that we don't have to think about it while it functions. You don't have to think about breathing, your diaphragm's moving. You don't have to think about that. It integrates with the movement of your diaphragm and your deep abdominals and deep spinal muscles. However, due to various circumstances in our lives, sometimes it gets out of sync. Sometimes it gets messed up. I don't want you to worry too much about the why, unless it's because it's a daily habit that you have now that something's going on. And I want to work through how do we become aware of it integrating with the whole system. And one of the ways we're going to do that today is by making sure we're moving the hip while keeping the pelvic alignment kind of in a specific placement at the best that you possibly can. Knowing that truly to sort of train it and strengthen it, we also have to get upright. We're going to start upright, and we're going to start with that hip movement. So let's get moving. You're going to step your feet, maybe hips, shoulders distance, something that feels comfortable for you. Keep your knees a little soft because I don't want you to feel like you have to lock your knees out. Make sure that that pubic bone and tailbone are pointing straight up and down. So a lot of times we wind up pointing a little forward or pointing a little back. I like to think it's a pelvic floor flashlight aiming straight down in between my inner ankles. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that flashlight side to side. I'm not doing my ribs side to side. I'm doing my pelvic floor flashlight side to side. So my pelvis is moving side to side on my femurs. And you probably may or may not notice, hopefully you notice, and you hopefully notice this glide side to side. And if it's gliding better on one side versus the other, because what we're getting is not only this glide of the pelvis side to side, you're testing, do I have medial and lateral movement of my femurs in my hip joint, right? Because your socket of your hip is in that pelvis. The muscles that wrap around the hip joint connect into that pelvic floor and have a link there, right? So it's all connected. And then you're gonna make circles. And again, not very big. You just think in that flashlight, making a circle on the floor, on your mat. You can take your hands to your pelvis. You can take your hands a little lower, more to like your hip joint, and explore what you're feeling there. And going the other way. So we're not going to be thinking Kegel for pelvic floor. A lot of us have like too tight pelvic floors, particularly in the posterior aspect, meaning in the back towards the tail and between the sits bones, it's too tight. And then you're gonna come center and you're gonna kind of move on a little bit of a diagonal. Almost like you're trying to move the flashlight a little bit towards the big toe side of one foot and then towards the back heel of the other foot, and just do that a few times on one side. So we're gonna really play with breath and that pelvic to hip connection. And then at the very end, we'll talk about how to do maybe a little bit more nuanced pelvic floor exercise that you can then take out into your life. And you're gonna go the other diagonal if you haven't already switched. And I don't want you to overthink this. You just exploring that. And then come back to center and go side to side a few times. And then we're gonna make your way down to your hands and knees on the floor. If you need any knee padding, you can use your towel or whatever knee padding you need. You don't need the ball yet. Bring your hands underneath your shoulders, pushing the ground away, pressing through your legs and your arms to find a little core integration. And you're gonna do one cat-cow, starting with the tail. So curling your coccyx bone. Remember the back of that pelvic floor, we're curling it down. We're tightening it towards the middle. Sits bones are curling down. Your spine will respond by rounding or flexing is what we call this. It's flexion of your spine. And then slowly go up with the tail. Let your sits bones widen. They naturally will do this. As your tail goes up, your pelvis will tilt, your sits bones should widen, and then you ripple out into extension of your spine. So cow. Make sure your belly is still supported there. And then I want you to find a happy medium. I want you to think about that pelvic floor flashlight. Make sure it doesn't start to tuck under, right? Because a lot of times we're here or we're reaching up. Sometimes people are a reach up and sometimes people are a reach down. So figure out where is a happy medium where I'm aiming that straight back. Like someone started a flashlight at the top of my head and you could just shine it right out through the pelvic floor. And you are going to allow that pelvic floor flashlight to aim back as you shift back. I am pressing through my arms and I'm lifting my belly. My sits bones will widen. My tail is still reaching back. My pubic bone is reaching back. And then you're going to pull with your arms as you come forward. And you'll feel it kind of, it's not tucking under and squeezing in. It's just narrowing just because I came to a little bit more center. So as I go into this deeper fold in my hip, also something like if we're squatting, getting our hips below our knees in a squat, but just squatting in general, taking ourselves into this deeper hip flexion, which is this more acute angle at the hip joint, that pelvic floor really has to widen. The pelvis has to change shape a little bit, just a little bit, right? To accommodate this deeper fold in the femurs kind of rolling there. And then you're gonna come forward. You're gonna do one more like that, allowing yourself, and I want you to hold on this one, and I want you to practice breathing. And when you breathe, I want you to imagine your breath stretches into the pelvic floor. As you exhale, feel a little gather, not like a tuck, just a little gather, and then inhale. So when I inhale, my diaphragm, my respiratory diaphragm pushes down on my viscera and on my back, right? Makes that expand, and it should go press against my pelvic floor a little bit. I should be able to have enough tone to withstand that in my pelvic floor, and if not, we keep working, we learn. And then as we exhale, the pressure lifts, and there should be this automatic kind of lift as you come up. We're gonna continue this stretch, and before you do any more kind of like some deeper stretches, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into a little circle. So you're gonna go off to one side, you're gonna go back, keep aiming back, and just feel, I feel a little line, lateral line in my leg there, stretch. I feel my pelvic floor stretch. You're gonna go around to the other side, and then forward, and then you're gonna go to the other direction. Engaging and pressing through my hands the whole time. I'm making sure it's not a pelvic, I'm not trying to do pelvis and spine circles. I'm trying to keep my trunk relatively stable and roll it around my arms and legs. Go the other direction. Breathing as you go back and coming center. And then I want you to do one more time each side. I want you to inhale as you shift those hips back, center, around, and forward, and then go the other way. Inhale as you stretch back. So again, that stretch into the pelvic floor, around and center. Then take one leg out to the side. So can you find a place where your leg can be to the side, even if the leg is bent, even if it's back? Can you find a place where your leg is to the side? You can push down through the mat, and your pelvic floor flashlight can aim straight back. Keep that pelvic floor flashlight aiming back as you go back, pressing through the arms. Take a big inhale there. And exhale, pulling forward. Doing that again. And pulling forward. In our dream scenario, our pelvis is like somewhat level as we do this, but a lot of times when we start, it's a little off. We're gonna try eventually to get you to where you are more level and with that leg out to the side. But not everyone has the same range of motion, so we go at your own pacing. Figure out, where can I keep this pelvic floor flashlight aiming straight back so that I'm enabling my femur, my leg, to roll in this socket, and that's how we're gonna start to open the pelvic floor, yawning it, become aware of it in this stretchy position, because if I don't have hip mobility, I'm most assuredly locked up in my pelvic floor. And then coming forward, bring this leg that's out to the side. You're gonna bring it forward. We're gonna add a little forward and back here. Come up onto your fingertips if you need to. You're just gonna go forward and back. And as you go back, you're gonna lift your foot, and again, you're gonna think, hop, right there. I wanted to tuck under with my tail. I'm aiming my flashlight down. We're gonna aim that flashlight back, heel forward, flashlight back. And it doesn't matter if you straighten all the way or not. You're just gonna do 3 of these. When you straighten, instead of thinking straighten my knee, you're gonna think aim my hips back, aim my flashlight back. One more. And then you're gonna bring that leg around. You're gonna come center. You're gonna shift, press, aim the flashlight back, push the floor away, shift back. Notice if it feels any different on the side that you have gone around with the leg versus the side you haven't. Breathe. Feel that breath go into that pelvic floor. And then come forward. Do the leg out to the other side. Again, find the position that's right for you. Knee bent, leg back. You can play with it. Aim that pelvic floor flashlight back. Keep the ribs lifted by pushing the ground away. And you're going to shift back. Sits bones will widen. And then you pull forward. And sits bones will widen. And then you pull forward. And I'm trying to think, my tail stays free, so I'm not tucking it under, but I'm not aiming it crazy up. I'm keeping my spine supported with my abdominals and the integration of my arms while allowing my pelvic floor to widen as I go back and forward. One more, making sure that you're breathing, inhaling as you go back. And then exhale as you come forward. And then we're gonna bring that leg around forward. If you need to, you can come up onto your fingertips. You could even come up higher onto like a yoga block or whatever you're working with. And you're gonna go forward, breathing there, trying to let that front hip really drop and crease. And then as you straighten, instead of rounding everything, you're gonna think, I don't care if the leg straightens fully. I'm gonna think heel reaches out, pelvic floor flashlight reaches straight back. And then you come forward. And then you go back. And then you go forward. And then you go back. And if you need more, you do more. And you remember to breathe. And then you're going to bring that leg all the way around. And you're going to come to rest on your back on the mat. We're going to take the ball underneath your pelvis. If you don't have a ball that's that size, you can do this on the ground. You do not have to have the ball. I just find that it's nice to tune into my sacrum a little bit. So you imagine that you've got soup in this bowl of your pelvis, but we're really talking pelvic floor today. So I want you to keep thinking about that pelvic bowl and the hollowing of the belly, but then I want you to tune into, am I even aware of the pubic bone, the ischial tuberosities or sits bones, and my tailbone here? And you're going to exhale and you're going to hollow or pull your belly in and back. Let your pelvis curl under. And I want you to direct your tail and your sits bones up towards the ceiling. So your coccyx, your tailbone, is coming closer to your pubic bone. Your sits bones are coming essentially closer to your thighs, but what we normally will think is up towards the back of the knees. Your feet can be wherever it feels comfortable. I'm wiggling around to find the place for me. And my pubic bone has lifted because of that, and that's okay. And then you're going to inhale, and you're going to reach the pubic bone down, reach the tail down, almost like I'm drawing my pubic bone down to my tail, down to the floor. My sits bones are going with that. And then we're going to exhale. We're going to kind of hollow the belly, pulling the front of the pelvis up. So we're using our abdominals, but we're also going to integrate pelvic floor. So the tail curls up to the pubic bone. The sits bones go up to the back of the knees, and the sits bones will narrow a little bit here too. So there's a little bit of a closing and narrowing there as they go up. And then you're going to release, let everything widen as it points down to the floor. And then you're going to do that 2 more times. Exhale. Pelvic floor gathers to the center a little bit. Sits bones lift up, tail lifts up, pubic bone lifts up. Spine drops back. Inhale, pubic bone goes down, tail reaches down, sits bones widen and reach down. And then one more. And these movements of narrowing and widening are small, right? It's not very big. And then you release and you widen. And then you find a happy medium. From there, you're going to make circles. So you're going to exhale and gather that base. Tilt the pelvis towards your face. Slowly roll your pelvis to one side. So you're rolling your sacrum and pelvis on the ball, down through the center there, across to the other side, and then up towards your face. Circling around. Now notice, I'm not doing this huge, I'm not flailing my ribs around, I'm really just trying to isolate my awareness of my pelvic floor and my pelvis. And there's a little bit of trust that you have to have in, like, I might not understand exactly where I'm going in all this movements today, but you're exploring it and you're trusting by moving it, that you're bringing balance to it. So come center and reverse whatever direction you're going in. You most likely chose the direction that is your preference. I did not designate go this way or go that way for that purpose, so that your body kind of chooses and tells you, oh, I like this way. And the other way is probably going to feel a little more complicated. When you come through the center of both the tipping towards your face, a posterior tilt, or an anterior tilt, tilting towards your feet or forward, do you really hit center, or are you kind of a little asymmetrical? See if you can really hit center. Take that moment, be like tail is down, pubic bones down, sits bones wide, and then keep rolling. Make sure your knees and your ribs are not doing the work that you want to get in your pelvis. And again, you can do this on the mat. You do not have to have a ball for this part. It's just nice to have that feedback, that little air bubble there. And then come center and really find the center. And you're going to gather your feet about sits bones distance. So you're going to bring your feet probably a little closer. Arms are down. You're going to press into your feet and pull slightly. You're going to tip your sits bones up towards the thighs, up towards the back of those knees, lengthening. So by getting that hamstring, I pull the back of my pelvis, gather and lengthen your tail with that. So I don't want your tail to collapse under. I want your tail to lengthen to the space between your knees, just like your sits bones are lengthening behind your knees as you press and lift up off of the ball. Stay there, breathe, and then slowly let your ribs drop back. Remember, because our rib cage and that respiratory diaphragm, that placement and that movement plays a role in that pelvic floor. But that's a conversation for another day. You're going to roll all the way down at the bottom. You're going to let everything rest. Should feel really nice if you have the ball to come off the ball. We're going to pull one leg in towards your chest. If you have knee issues, I definitely would hold the thigh. And I want you to pull it in as close as you feel comfortable. It's probably going to rotate your pelvis just a little bit as you straighten the other leg out. I want you to flex that foot, and I want you to hold there, and I want you to breathe. I want you to breathe and send breath into your belly, your back, and all the way down into that pelvic floor. And then as you exhale, feel that sense of rebound, that lift. You inhale, it goes down. You exhale, lifts. If you want to add more stretch, you can take this bent leg, take the knee to the armpit, take the foot a little towards the ceiling. So like 1/2 of a happy baby pose, if you know that from like a yoga class you've taken. Inhale down, all the way to that coccyx. Exhale up. One more. Inhale. Exhale. Bring that leg down. Switch sides. Bring the other leg in. Stretch the other leg down and out. Breathing. 2 breaths here. Your variation. I'm trying to keep my sacrum centered, and I'm trying to take nice deep breaths, getting them all the way down into that pelvic floor flashlight. And when you're ready, you can add, if you want to, you could just stay here and practice breathing, because you'll find one side has more tension than the other usually. Knee to the armpit if you want, foot flex, foot towards the ceiling a little bit, that half of a happy baby pose. This side, for my body, I can feel the tension is a little bit different than the other side. So I'm just going to send a little breath and like almost a little stretch in the areas that feel a little tighter on this side. Because it's not always about tightening and lifting all the time with the pelvic floor. It is working with the diaphragm, with the breath, with the pressure volume system of your abdomen. And then come all the way down. There's more that we could do there, but for the sake of our time, I'm going to move you to upright. So you're going to use your ball, whether you're using a big physio ball or a little ball like this. We're going to come upright, and essentially you're going to sit on it. So if you have knee pad, you need knee padding, use that. I'm going to take this ball, I filled it up, not completely full, but almost all the way full. And I'm going to sit on this. And I have the mobility in my knees to do this now at this junction in my life. I might not in the future. So I might need to have different padding, or I might need to sit on the physio ball because of that. So pick what's right for you today. And you're putting this there, and you're going to take your hands to your belly. And sometimes you can stack your hands, and that's more helpful. Sometimes we just spread our hands to our belly, and that feels good. And what I want you to do is notice if you immediately kind of aim the pubic bone forward and the tail tucked under, and you have more kind of pressure towards your tail and the back of your sits bones, I want to aim, as you might have guessed, that pelvic floor flashlight straight up and down. Again, that flashlight coming through the top of my head, zoop, right down through the center of the floor. And what you're going to do is you're going to shift a little side to side, similar to when you were standing. But now your legs are kind of totally out of it in a certain way. I mean, you're still moving your pelvis on your femurs. And I want you to notice if you can guide this from your sits bones pushing into the ball. So as I go one way, one sits bone pushes down deeper into the ball, the other one kind of opens up. And then as I go center, if I'm both even, and then I push the other side, can I have intention of leading this from my ischial tuberosities? And which side is easier and which side is harder? And then the question is, when you were standing earlier and doing the standing side to side, does it correlate? I can feel myself elite. I'm trying to do my side to side movement on this side that's tighter with my whole body. So it happens to all of us. Then I want you to make circles here. So I want you to breathe and circle your pelvis on here. It's so great because you feel this direct feedback. Whether you're on the physio ball or the little ball, you can feel that air bubble meet the pelvic floor there. And I want you to breathe with this. Inhaling as you reach down and back. Exhale as you come forward. Inhale as you reach down and back. Exhale as you go forward. Go the other direction. Inhale as you go down and back. Again, small. It's not huge. And around. Inhaling. Exhaling. Sometimes the stuff, it's the same as when I do very detailed toe and footwork. My face has to make funny faces trying to figure out what am I talking to? What am I communicating with? One more, coming all the way around and center. Once you're centered, you can wiggle around. I want you to just hold there. If you need to adjust your legs, mine are kind of getting wider and wider. I want you to hold there. Now we're going to add in the strengthening part. I want you to forget about Kegels as the way that you knew them, of just tighten, squeeze, which a lot of times people regroup their hips and their glutes and all that stuff, which is not inherently bad, but there is a better way. So I want you to think pelvic floor elevator, right? Very traditional pelvic floor physical therapist thing. So you're going to imagine that base, that's the lobby where you're sitting. You're going to breathe in, it's going to go down to the basement a little bit from the tail pubic bone and the two sits bones. As you exhale, you're going to gather and lift. Elevator doors will gather, then you go up, 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 up. Maybe you just are I can go up to the first floor. Maybe you can go up to the fifth floor. Maybe you can go all the way up to the top of your head. I don't know. And then you're going to inhale. You're going to let it go back down to the lobby. Maybe you let it go to the basement. Maybe that feels precarious for you. You're I live at the basement. I'm too loose. Or I'm too loose at my bladder, and I can feel that. Or at the tail end, right? So you figure that out for your body, and then you explore, where do you need to gather? Where do you need to lift? So on your exhale, you gather, and you go, oh, I need a little bit more support in the front or the side or the back. And you're going to gather and lift. And you can feel it on the ball. You can feel that feedback of oh, I really am tensing on one side, but I'm not getting a lot on the other side. And could I, play around with that? And then you're going to inhale and go down. And then exhale, gather and lift. It will start to play a role in your belly here, right? So your abs will naturally kind of fire with this. If you take your hands there, you'll feel that. Inhale, let it go down to the lobby. Exhale, gather and lift and lift and lift. You're not swaying your spine. One more. I know this seems like you're not doing anything, but it's really important to find this quality, this more nuanced dynamic in your pelvic floor and its relationship with your overall core, because now you can be like, oh, I don't just like clamp down and bear down because that's going to push everything out. That's going to increase the pressure too much too soon. So you're going to inhale and then exhale, gather and lift, going straight out through the top, right? So gather and lift. You need more at the pubic bone, the tailbone, or one sits bone. Could you imagine those sits bones kind of gathering the ball, the pubic bone and the tailbone gather and lifting the ball? Could you gather and lift so much so that you start to push into your shins and you come all the way up? You're going to come up to standing. So make sure you don't have anything in the way. You're going to come up to standing, and we're going to repeat what you started with. So feet wide, you can go side to side. Knees a little soft. Notice if you can get this lateral glide. Make a circle. Notice how it feels. For me, it feels a little bit like fuller. I feel like I can go a little bit bigger without feeling forced in it. And you've done that by gentle pelvic movements and breathing, gentle hip stretches and breathing. So you've mobilized this whole area, and then you've toned into it. Be like, oh, I can go down, I can go up, I can find this stretch and this yawn. And then you're going to come center with your feet underneath you. And you're going to be present with that connection from your feet to your pelvic floor to your breathing all day long. Until next time, keep moving.